Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Snakes and Ladders. As usual, I'm here with these two reprobates. How are we, guys?
Couldn't be better.
Couldn't be better? What do you mean you couldn't be better? I'm sure you could be better in a few ways.
If it was sunnier, I could be better. And if it wasn't half term, it could be better.
Oh yeah, it has been half term this week, but as you could expect, we've all been role model fathers, right? Fathers of the year. We're all vying for Father of the Year.
No, I left my child when my parents went to a 5-star hotel. And it was excellent. And I can tell you now, I had a massage to end all massages. This woman goes, "Oh, you're booked for the Aloha massage, right?" I went, "Sure." She says, "It's very oily." Oh, conditions are perfect.
Oh, I love that. So jealous. I could really use one of those. If you ever wanted to get me a gift, a little massage would be good.
Yeah,
or maybe just some time
fantastic.
off while I'm the backbone, sort of looking after everything while Chico's
Father
on a
Justice
holly
over
box.
here is doing all of his parenting. Absolutely. Carossa Hotel in Mallorca. Could not recommend it highly enough. Stunt, like incredible. Yeah.
Not a paid endorsement. Anyway, let's get into it. James Lee, lead us out.
Wonderful. Thank you. So a lot going on in the markets this week. Global markets hitting records all over the place. The US, the UK, Japan. It's all just popping off. FTSE 100 now up nearly 17% for the year, not including divvies. A lovely IPO this week in London as well. Shawbrook Group up 7%.
You heard
from
it here
first day of
first.
trading.
Jimmy's been talking their book for the last couple of weeks.
So, and that's great because I think having a successful IPO on the first day with the shares popping up obviously means that everyone's made a bit of money out the gate, but B, other companies that are thinking about IPOing think actually maybe the window is open, so let's go for it.
Yeah, as you say, let's hope more follows, right?
And in America, approximately 112 days after becoming the world's first $4 trillion company, NVIDIA is now the world's first $5 trillion company.
$5 trillion company who sold their NVIDIA shares.
And Apple lagging massively behind just by becoming a $4 trillion company, correct?
Well, the bit was Microsoft became a $4 trillion company because of OpenAI position as well, right? Like literally got dragged into the club.
The restructuring minted $135 billion stake in OpenAI from Microsoft based on I can't remember what the investment was. Wild.
It is as well, by the way, his non-profit enterprise. Anyway,
yeah, I mean now very, very much so for profit. I did read somewhere that Jensen Huang's net worth rose by $17 billion in a week.
Oh, lovely.
So NVIDIA is now valued at the same as Germany's entire economy, which is another nice stat.
That is a great stat out the bat, Mr. Lee. Love it. I'm going to be telling everyone that all weekend.
That is wild. So just a quick question from me. Is this the later stages of the bubble? I know a huge question to start, but what do you think?
Yeah, but who's brave enough to call it?
I'm definitely not. I'm way too invested.
Diamond hands will be in it till zero.
What is definitely apparent is every single newspaper I read at the minute, at least 10% of the articles are saying, are we now in bubble territory? Which I don't think 6 months ago, that is what people were talking about. So you do wonder.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like we are, say the dot-com bubble. Apparently the figures don't track quite as badly as that. So I think there's more room to run.
It's the concentration as well, though, isn't it? That it is, each bubble is different, but the concentration of this NVIDIA, and even the Mag 7 aren't really Mag 7 anymore. A few of them have spiraled off, and yeah, it's interesting times. But I sort of slightly agree with you, Ben. I think there may be, especially, and we spoke about it a few times, and frankly, we're instigators of the whole thing, but with the retail investor movement as well, we've bought the dip a few times this year. There's no doubt I think that will potentially sustain it a little longer, but yeah, $5 trillion in a single company. I think
Palantir to the moon, by the way.
Should we just get the t-shirts made for that now?
It's not investment advice from
I'm going to be holding on to I'm holding on to that till it's zero. Sorry, just let me ask as the best looking but the least informed of the group, can I ask a silly question? When Microsoft mints the OpenAI investment, what does that actually mean practically?
I think all it really means is that OpenAI has restructured, and in doing so, they've had to basically give everyone an equity position based on the money they've invested. Because my understanding, and I don't know all of it, is SoftBank wanted to put a lot of money in, and a load of other investors have put a lot of money in, but the money was all contingent on them restructuring so that it wasn't a not-for-profit and they could have an equity position. So the conversation with Microsoft went along the lines of, what is your original investment worth in the new equity structure? And I think they've put in something, I could be wrong, it's something like $13 billion, which they started in 2019. So yeah, 13 billion, what is it, 6 years
Not
later?
a bad ROI.
No.
Not bad at all. That really is not bad.
And now everyone's talking about this really opens the doors probably in 2027 for OpenAI to list in New York.
Why? Hang on. Sorry, explain that to me.
Because they're losing tens of billions of dollars a year, so they need more and more money.
And they'll take it from people like you and me, Ben.
Yeah, I know. I just thought, I've always been told, in the past few months, I've been told that there's enough money in the private markets that they wouldn't even need to go public at any point in the near future.
I mean, I feel like OpenAI at this point is some neutron star just sucking in all the energy and money around it. And I mean, if it's just been valued at $500 billion, I don't think that what SpaceX valued at 500, but I don't think there's that many more companies private. Can you get any bigger without? Yeah, they're going to have to go for the public.
Also, Ben, I think even if you could, I think you're probably right from what you've heard. They probably could continue to fund it privately, but why bother? They have to do more deals. It's there's enough people, I would suggest, and they will think the same. The public sentiment is on their side sufficiently that it's probably an easier narrative to manage at that point. Actually, the public will all just come rushing. I mean, if NVIDIA is worth $5 trillion, OpenAI caused it, really, didn't it? By the ChatGPT movement, and they literally triggered NVIDIA's. So what could they be worth? You got to think, yeah.
Well, one of the stats that was really interesting out this morning was Caterpillar's shares were up 12%. Overnight, it put its results out. But also, the reason the shares are up so much is because the amount of equipment that all these hyperscalers are leasing to build their new data centers means that it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy of it's all trickling down
to construction vehicles.
Yeah,
12%.
The gold rush. Sell the spades.
I mean, that is extraordinary. I understand the sort of the trickle down, and you want to go downstream and find those investment opportunities, but 12% in construction machinery for AI is wild.
I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, if you look at the energy requirement to meet Sam Altman's projections of growth, the US would have to double its current output. I mean, it'd have to deliver at a rate that only China has managed. And I think that, there are huge issues with that, which actually is not a bad lead into this week's topic, Mr. Lee.
No, we've got a very interesting topic to discuss this week. And it's all sort of linking together. But the number we're starting off with is 11,137.
Catchy.
Quite niche. And that is the price per ton of copper that was achieved this week in the London Metals Exchange. It's the record highest of all time. And the red metal, why is this such an important metal? Well, for everything we've just been talking about with the advent of AI, it's the demand of copper generally is just taking off like there's no tomorrow. And I've got some nice statistics here of how much copper is in everything. So your iPhone has about 6 to 15 grams of copper in it. Your typical EV car has circa 84 kilos of copper in it.
Which is about £1,000 worth of copper at trade cost, like from the mines.
And the one that's really blow your mind is a 787 Dreamliner is rumoured to have 57 miles of copper in it.
I can believe it. I think back to the houses that I used to build, and for those that don't know, that I spent early career in high net worth homes. I mean, we are talking enough cabling in the average Chelsea house to go around the world a couple of times just for all the network connectivity that people wanted. So it's totally believable that 56 miles of cable flying in the air. Love it.
And so as with all these things, it comes back to market dynamics. What's happening with demand? Well, as we've just talked about, everything from AI, digitization, renewable energy production, the rollout of 5G, energy storage capacity, increased defense spending, you name it, pretty much everything that is in the newspaper today requires more and more copper to be produced. And on the supply side, this year, there's been a couple of materially significant mines come offline, one in Indonesia and one in the DRC. And both of those have also dovetailed with declining ore rates in the mines that are currently in production. And the final one is the challenge is bringing new mines onto supply. So the statistic that I read was it takes circa 18 years to bring a copper mine into production. And the Resolution copper mine, which is a joint project between, I think it's Rio Tinto and BHP in Arizona, that was first discovered in 1995, and they're still trying to get it into production.
How does that compare to other ore mining? Is copper a particularly difficult extraction process, which means it takes such a long time?
I think a lot of it comes down to what the grade is and the size of the porphyry. So basically, if the price per ton isn't high enough, then obviously the mine's not commercial. Yeah. And as with most of the other, whether it be oil and gas fields or mines, the low-hanging fruit in either commercially low-hanging fruit, as in it's got a very high ore grade, or the low-hanging fruit, as in they're in very safe and stable jurisdictions, has all been mined or is currently in production. So you've now got to veer further off the sort of beaten path. You've got to go
a bit more rogue territorially.
Yeah, you do. And but a lot of these companies are basically saying we need the copper price at something in order to make this commercial for us.
Well, it's coming to them.
Yeah.
You've got to think, 11,000 is, as you say, all-time high, very exciting. This one feels like it's got to go up from here. Obviously, it'll take its own journey, but the demand pressures are just too high. There is one take on this, though, I thought, when I had a little read through the note you sent around. I think there's something to be said for looking out for copper recyclers as well. This is something that does recycle really well. And it's one of the ones that often gets nicked off sites. But, copper pipes in houses are becoming now really valuable. But it does, as a metal, clean out pretty well, and I wonder if there's an angle there, because to your point, to actually get to the supply quantity required might not even be feasible in the time scale unless some corners are cut or some governments start to force this through, right? So a lot of it is difficult locations or something, protected environments, all those sorts of things that people need to factor in. It may just be that it's pretty difficult to even produce enough unless we start working out other ways of recapturing it.
And I think that's where, as with all these things, can the compound be substituted for other commodities? Or if you're Elon Musk, I mean, Elon's big thing with Starlink generally isn't let's lay copper cables and lots of fiber all along the ground. Let's just do a very intricate, let's skip it and just put it all up into the sky, and then we need less of the stuff.
Yeah, and I think that there is that risk, even alluding to Ben's point earlier of the who's calling the bubble. Infrastructure build out. If we to go anywhere near, and I'm not saying we are, but if we were to go near the .com thing, there was a massive infrastructure build out. Then they didn't quite need as much as they built, and then it all came through in the end.
It all got used in the end, yeah.
But it's still plausible we'll see something like that. So it might be that we see a bit of a slump in demand in the next 24 months. You've got to think in the fullness of time, however, this is going to continue to feel pressure, especially with the sort of EV. Actually, it's not just AI, is it? It's all the angles we're looking at that's putting pressure on this.
Who's interested in the long-term time in the market? I want to know short-term. How does this? How does Trump's tariffs affect copper imports and copper pricing globally?
Massively. But I deliberately didn't go into that much detail on the research cheat sheet because
I want short term now.
It became very complicated with the Trump tariffs, and I think that's going to because tariffs and steel generally have been hit with tariffs coming into the States. So I think if you're a US producing miner, then you obviously don't have to pay the tariffs. But I think if you're one of the ones in Africa or South America or something like that, and Chile is the largest copper producing country in the world, then you have to pay some tariffs on it now.
And just talking about the short-term gains here, obviously, but also Charlie's long-term time in the market, as someone who I've never invested in, I've invested in uranium, but through uranium mining companies. If I wanted to invest in copper, what are the easiest ways to be able to do that?
It's funny you should ask that, Ben, because I have a list here. Look, well, let's start at the end. The best way to do this is to get some exposure in your portfolio using ETFs, and there are a few different options there. The top of the list for me would be to understand that there's pure copper plays, but there's actually a lot of synthetics. And what do we mean by that? That means people who are using futures contracts on your behalf to predict where the piece will go, and effectively getting to the equivalent of tracking copper prices without actually buying copper. So you need to understand that when you're buying into an ETF, you might not actually be buying the underlying asset. However, the sensible play would be to go for something that is diversified. For those of you like Benjamin who like a flutter, and still talking our book, Investing in the UK, you've got a few different companies to have a look at. So BHP Group, which is BHP ticker, which is nice and easy. They've got the world's biggest copper mine in Chile. So it's not a bad place to start. They actually think, so their internal modeling, Jimmy, to your point on exploding demand, suggests that the demand could double by 2040 based on the current trajectory. Now, they're obviously talking their own book, but they're probably not a million miles off. That is a hell of a statement. So look, in terms of a company that is well positioned to capitalize on these price increases now, they're online, you're not investing necessarily in the future, that's not a bad one. Glencore, they're a big copper producer, and also they have a lot of other precious metals as well. So if you're interested in zinc, cobalt, nickel, and all those sorts of things, and this is fairly interesting diversified play. We haven't spoken about those, but there is almost a sort of quite a tight synergy, would it be fair to say here, Jimmy? Okay, most of the things we talk about, the demands for those tend to overlap. A lot of this is EV and AI driven type of metals and things like that.
Yeah, and also the nice benefit is that copper producers, quite often the copper deposits are also interlinked with gold deposits, which with gold being at $4,000, then it's quite nice if you've got like 5+% of your production also being gold.
Not a bad one. I like Glencore for the other angle that I mentioned earlier. They've got a recycling and circular economy play that they're making a fairly big fuss about at a big level. I think there's something really important about that as well. What else have we got? You could have a look at the classic Anglo-American. It's one that's very close to our hearts. If you know anything about Jimmy's history, still a really big player. Or you could be looking at some of the mid caps. So FTSE 250's got Italia Mining. They're kind of interesting because they've got some EU green tech kind of angles going on there. So, worth looking at. Any of those would give you exposures. I think there's something to be said for anybody who's looking at exactly what you're talking about there, Jimmy, the diversification. So copper is a core, but what are they doing around it? The spin-off of gold, the recycling, anything like that be looking for. But as ever, this is the furthest thing from financial advice. And if you were to really think this is a good idea, I'd be going on something that is spread.
And did your research also cover really sort of precarious corner of the world, sort of really potential high upside plays at all?
No.
Oh, shame. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, next week, maybe I'll give you guys some of those for some of those 10x wins.
I can see already we're going to have to change it from Snakes and Ladders to Snake Oil Salesman on this, aren't we?
Palantir to the moon. Okay, lads. Well, that was actually, I would say, the perfect podcast. So thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
And we will look forward to seeing you, our fans, our loyal tribe, again next week for another episode of Snakes and Ladders. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.